chat. Let me know if you can hear me. Sound off in the chat. I'm just doing an audio check here, so just let me know if you can hear me. This is Erik talking here, by the way. Don't mean to scare you as a voice of God, because I am not God. I'm the opposite. I'm Mephisto. But yeah, let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Hello! Welcome back to The Deep Dive. I'm Erik Voss. I'm so glad to be here with you today to talk about this, The Flash, the 2023 film starring Ezra Miller, Michael Keaton, Sasha Calle, Ben Affleck, and everybody in the freaking DC multiverse shows up in this movie. This will be a spoiler conversation about The Flash. If you haven't seen this movie yet, I can understand if you don't really want to go pay money to see this in the movie theater. There's a lot of different people who are rooting for this movie to fail. But as someone who loves movies, and I love the pastime of going to your local cinema, supporting that business, buying some popcorn, sitting in a crowded theater, and just escaping for a couple hours, just go see the movie in the movie theater. We'll talk about the various reasons why you might not want to do that, and if you don't feel comfortable with it, I'm not going to force you to do it. But I like it when movies do well. I'm never rooting for a movie to fail just because I love all the artists who put their time and put their energy and their creativity and their passion onto a big screen. So I'm never going to be the person who says, don't pay money to see this, just watch new Rockstars and deep dive content about it. But we're going to do a live stream just talking about this movie, because it's surprising to see the conversation going on around this film. In some ways not that surprising, but there's a lot to discuss, I think, with the film and what it's trying to do and the big swings it tries to take, and not all the swings are successful. If you watched my Easter egg breakdown of this movie on the main New Rockstars channel, please do. By the way, we put a lot of work into it. Some of the comments and feedback I've been getting are that I seemed a bit not as enthusiastic about the movie. If I seemed that way, it might have just been because I was shooting it in a different setup where I had to stand, and just whatever, my energy was just different. It was after the end of a very stressful workday where I was like, oh crap, I have to get a shift of this breakdown written and shot. So I was just kind of rushed. But yeah, there were times where I kind of go off a bit, and I think that's a genuine response to some of the VFX in the movie, some of the plotting choices. Putting a baby in a microwave, I just cannot rationalize why the hell you would ever do that in a movie, in any context. And some of the acting choices in this movie, I just didn't overall enjoy. But here's the deal, folks. When this movie ended, as the credits were rolling, I wasn't crazy about the post-credit scene. There's some choices with the ending where I was like, okay, haha, whatever. Overall, though, I kind of like this movie. I think the story structure, pretty strong. I think that the direction, pretty strong. There was a lot of humor in it that I genuinely enjoyed, a lot of emotion and catharsis that I really enjoyed. I think the multiverse mechanics, at least the design, like the visual concept of the Chrono Bowl and the way that arena of time, I thought was really cool. Like, I get why people are enjoying this movie, and I consider myself one of them. I don't agree with some of the claims that were made going into this movie that it was the best superhero movie of all time. I think it's just a ridiculous statement. If you feel that way, power to you. Totally great. I think, a part of the problem with the expectation game of this film is that they had so many different celebrities and public figures tweeting just insanely positive praise, from Tom Cruise to Stephen King to James Gunn, and I think that just kind of played into the natural cynicism that exists on Twitter and on many social media platforms going into these films. Everyone just went into this movie, not everyone, but many people went into this movie with their arms crossed saying, all right, okay, we'll see. And then just started looking for problems with it, rather than just going in blind. I'm kind of curious to, let's go to some suburb in America. I'm going to find the nearest Buffalo Wild Wings, sit down at a table with a pitcher of beer, and just chat with maybe someone in that group who might have seen the movie and just get their honest thoughts. Because I kind of feel like they might have enjoyed it. If you go into this movie not knowing any of the drama that's going on at Warner, or with Ezra Miller's legal issues, or with the drama with James Gunn taking over DC Films, or with everything Warner's done to cancel movies like Batgirl, which was incredibly stupid, or things with the discourse around superhero movie cinema and superhero fatigue and VFX design in movies, I kind of wonder if people might just enjoy this movie and find it funny. I was surprised to see the cinema score of B. That would be the cinema score I would have given it, honestly. But the group of people I saw it with, I saw it at it was like a press event, but it was mostly filled with fans who lined up for hours to try to see it. The crowd I saw it with loved it. They were falling on the floor laughing, and not like in a cynical way. The humor was working in a way that, for a lot of it, it didn't work for me. I found Ezra Miller's performances kind of cringy and kind of unwatchable in some moments, to be honest with you. But that was not the case with everyone around me. And I just had to learn, as someone who talks about movies for a living on YouTube, when to just kind of like separate my own personal tastes from A, the craftsmanship, and B, the wide response to a movie. And there are times online where I do express my own personal opinion about it, but I think what's a more valuable contribution to the overall discourse is to just go through a film and recognize the craftsmanship and what the intentions were of the filmmakers, and then you can kind of assess in a bit more of a fair judgment whether or not they accomplished those intentions, rather than just write it off with a take that it was all crap. So yes, let's talk about this movie, and the best way to support the deep dive, you may notice I am wearing an Indie I Love You shirt. It's from our deep dive collection on nerdriot.shop. We're doing Spielberg Summer here on the deep dive channel, where I'm going back through some of my favorite Spielberg films that I always watch every year during the summertime. It's just something, whether you can go to an outdoor movie screening, sometimes movie houses will play these movies again, which is the coolest way to see it, or just like streaming it. These are the movies I put back on every year. So right now, the Indiana Jones movies are on Disney Plus, and you can watch them there, or go buy the Blu-rays or whatever you want. And we have Temple of Doom. Our deep dive is coming out tomorrow. The Raiders of the Lost Ark deep dive is already on the channel, and then either the end of this week or next week we'll have Last Crusade. We're gonna try to get to Crystal Skull. I don't know if we'll have time, but then I intend to do another one of these live streams for Dial of Destiny, which I did see. But this isn't a review of Dial of Destiny. Dial of Destiny surprised me with how much I enjoyed it. I didn't think I was gonna like that much, but it has issues. But overall, it's a pretty good movie, pretty fun. Okay, but let's talk about The Flash. So The Flash, this movie has been like in development hell for like a decade. There's been all types of hands on it. At one point, Robert Zemeckis, Rick Famuyiwa, I think, was attached to it. But now Andy Muschietti and Christina Hodson worked on it. So Andy Muschietti directed the It movies, It Chapter 1, It Chapter 2 for Warner, and did an amazing job with those films, both of them like billion-dollar movies. So he's a big-time director. He knows what he's doing. And then Christina Hodson, who wrote Bumblebee and did a really, really good job with the script. And this is why I'm making this live stream right now, is I'm seeing a lot of hot takes on Twitter, on YouTube from critics and movie reviewers and just film commentators who I highly respect. And there's a really weird conversation around this film where they are either choosing not to talk about it because they don't want to talk about a movie with Ezra Miller in it, or they're just annoyed with this movie's existence, or they are using their hatred for certain things about this movie's existence to blind them to their own intellectual approach to every other film they talk about and the craftsmanship that goes into it. And it is not fair to say that Andy Muschietti is a bad director or that Christina Hodson's a bad writer. His direction and her screenwriting for this film are wonderful. And there are several sequences, and generally the whole movie, the way it's structured and paced and edited, is successful. The dialogue, the concepts that are at play are successful. Where it fails, I think, unfortunately, are in the casting. I think some of the decisions by the studio to include, just to throw these cameos or these weird VFX at us in that closing sequence, and the ending of the film, I think, ends in a kind of a weird place, and some of the VFX execution. But those are all, for the most part, fairly forgivable. I don't think this movie deserves to only be making $55 million. I think it should be a $100 million movie. But let's be honest, there's a lot different groups of people who are rooting for this movie to fail. Just to kind of name a few, because I think I don't have a problem with any of these people saying I don't want to pay for this movie, because I fully understand. For one, you have people who have legitimate issues with Ezra Miller's legal history. And let's talk about it a little bit. Like, just because I don't think we should really forget what's really going on here. Ezra Miller's been accused of like choke slamming someone in a bar in Iceland. Ezra Miller has been accused of drunken, disorderly conduct in Hawaii. Just being a real jerk at a karaoke bar, allegedly, and then like breaking into a couple's hotel or their apartment to scream at them. And then there's this real, you could say, problematic relationship with a minor, where the parents are saying that Ezra like groomed this person, and it was just a pretty inappropriate relationship. Again, this is all alleged. I'm not Nancy Grace here. I'm just saying there's a lot of smoke here, and there's a reason why Ezra Miller has not been put on a publicity tour, but they did appear at the red carpet, and they seem to be pretty well behaved. And honestly, it seems like they have just been going through a lot. So I hope they can get the health care that they need, the mental health care. But I think we also need to imagine, just because someone is going through a mental health crisis doesn't excuse them from being a complete asshole to other people and to commit crimes. So let's just keep that in mind. So yeah, I think there are real issues there, and this movie just got too far along, and you couldn't really recast, especially since we see multiple Barrys in this movie. Obviously, there are also criticisms with Warner as a studio. Their decision to cancel the Batgirl movie, who knows, maybe that movie was a pile of dog crap, but like, just as a write-off, just feels kind of gross that they did that while still spending all the money to market this movie. They paid for a Super Bowl spot, and they put so much in that Super Bowl spot. You know how much money? It was at least $100 million that they spent on marketing, probably more. Just all kinds of decisions. Some people object to James Gunn taking over DC films for Warner Brothers. I'm personally optimistic for that. I don't have a problem with that. There's a lot of Snyder loyalists out there, and I'm going to spend some time, I think, in a future video. Might be a dumb idea, but I want to talk about the history of the release of Snyder Cut and Restore the Spiderverse movement. I don't think it's fair to call it a cult, because it does a disservice to call cults, or for them to share the name. It's not a cult. It's not a cult. It'd be a very different, more dangerous thing if it was a cult. But it is a very, very powerful and influential movement on Twitter right now, and it has some really negative aspects to it. But it also has a lot of well-meaning, nice people who are a part of it. So I don't want to paint them all with the same brush. But the way it is being talked about on Twitter and on other social platforms is being framed largely by the people who kind of adhere to that same type of thinking and believe in those same opinions. So they're rooting for it to fail. You have people who disagree with like Ezra Miller's gender identity that don't want this movie to succeed, which, that's kind of a bullshit reason to root for something to fail. You have fans of the Arrowverse Flash, the Grant Gustin Flash, that like want their Flash to be the Flash that everyone cares about, and once they heard that there wasn't a cameo for him in this movie, feel like some injustice had occurred here. So there's just like a lot of different, and a lot of these people are in the opening weekend crowd. So eventually you start to have to wonder, who is this movie for? We know who this movie's not going to be for, and I think eventually, like, that's why I think this movie could do well the second weekend and the third weekend, because I think the people who aren't plugged into the drama might still turn out to this movie, because I think it does a lot of things well. So let's kind of go through it. I'm not going to spend as much time going in depth. Watch my new Rockstars main channel breakdown for a lot of the Easter eggs and the themes. Overall, I do like how this film just kind of jumps right into an opening action scene that is set in the DCEU continuity as we know it. And we get to get a sense of this relationship that Barry Allen has with Bruce Wayne. And it's a really cool, well-structured action sequence, and it won me over right away. And I love this Philby's Cafe, and I talked about in the breakdown that Philby is a reference to H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. It's like the first work of fiction that talked about time travel, like in a popular way. But we do have this opening shot of like just a clock, and I think one of the more valid criticisms is that The movie does deal with time travel in the multiverse, but not in a way that says anything new about the way we should look at the multiverse. Now, yes, it does have a different set of rules for how the multiverse works, but on a thematic standpoint, if you look at movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once or Across the Spiderverse or really Into the Spiderverse, I think has done this the best. Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness kind of swung but didn't really connect in this regard. Spider-Man No Way Home kind of touched on it. There have been episodes of other series and movies that have done this, but ideally you say something new about the idea of escapism or the idea of wishful thinking or the idea of regret. And this movie touches on it a little bit, but just not in a way that I feel moved the overall ball forward. I don't think it has to, but I just would have liked it if it did. So, sorry, I've been neglecting the chat, but Christian, thank you for your super chat. And I know you've been a huge supporter of the break room, too, so I always love seeing you pop up here. Thank you. Christian says, hi, Eric, just ordered my first shirt from Nerd Riot a few days ago. I got the Totally Not a Skrull shirt. Thank you, Christian. Yeah, that's part of our new Secret Invasion collection that you can get at nerdriot.shop. Secret Invasion is coming back June 21st, this week, on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Around that time, you will see my Easter egg breakdown. We're going to do something new at New Rockstars where I will have my Easter egg breakdown same day. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to be spending any less time on it. It's still going to be a really in-depth, high-quality analysis of each episode. We're lucky for the first 2 episodes, we're getting screeners a bit early. So we're going to start that process a bit early so you can see it as soon as you watch the episode. But we'll also be doing Inside Marvel. It's shifting to be an in-person thing that we have some new exciting guests who are coming in, but not new to you. You'll have seen these people before. And we're going to be on live in person in the New Rockstars offices. So it's going to be super, super fun. But our first episode of Inside Marvel is going to be on the main channel, and a bonus extended version of it will be on the break room. And then after that, it's going to shift to the break room. So be sure to subscribe to the break room as well, because we're going to do some that's going to be like the home for all of our reaction content, our experimental, loose, goof around stuff, but also ways for us to react and comment on breaking news in a group setting that we've never really been able to do on the main New Rockstars channel. That's going to be where the break room is going to be able to excel, and I think you're really going to want to subscribe to it. So getting back to this film, Philby's Cafe, Barry needs to carbo load. This feels like a continuation of the Flash that we knew in Justice League and the Snyder Cut, which I really, really liked Ezra Miller's performance as Barry Allen in the Snyder Cut. As a leading figure, it's not that they cannot act. Obviously, Ezra Miller's a talented actor, but I like them in Perks of Being a Wallflower. In this film, they lost me. And there were times where I understood what they were doing in the first act of the movie, but seemed really at odds with where they were in the second act of the film. And I think I liked them most when Ezra is playing both Ezras, but specifically when we see old Barry talking to young Barry. Young Barry I found almost unwatchable. Like, I was just so annoyed with that version of Barry throughout the film. Just the vocalizations, the energy, and I understand we're supposed to find them annoying, but it was just too much for me. But I liked the straight manning that Ezra did as like the normal voice of reason, and specifically when they were in Bruce's kitchen with Michael Keaton. And then young Barry's like, oh, wait, he's Batman? Old Barry's like, what did you think we were doing here? That specific line, I think, was their funniest line. Also, when young Barry does the cowl turn, I can't help but crack up. I tried to put that in the thumbnail for the breakdown. I thought that was so funny. By the way, what we're looking at here, you may be asking, what is all this text on the screen? We're looking at the string out. This is what we call a string out of the movie that we compile from all available trailer footage of the film. You see different dimensions of it here. This is because we grabbed this from a TikTok that Warner released. We compile it all in a chronological string out so that helps me write the breakdown, and our editors piece it together visually. So that's a lot of the work that we do to try to recreate the movie from available marketing footage. So that's what we're using here. Literally, I just grabbed this from Twitter, from YouTube, from other places that they released. So we did technically get a Henry Cavill Superman cameo in this movie, but it's kind of a cheap one, right? We see Superman from behind. I don't understand what he's doing right now. He's saving people in Guatemala, but how are you saving people by firing heat vision at lava? Would that just maybe? I guess maybe he's redirecting the flow of the lava by breaking up the ground to kind of create a ditch for the lava to flow away from the city. Okay, I was able to answer my own question. I would just think like, can't Superman like freeze it with his breath or something like that? I guess if it's gonna keep flowing, I don't know. I just saw heat vision. I'm like, fire on fire ain't gonna make the fire better. So this opening scene, and we can't see it here in the trailer footage, but they do a fun thing where they keep trying to show the title of the movie, but it gets interrupted by the fans. Again, when I was watching this opening scene, I was like, okay, I'm on board. I'm with this movie. I always prefer it in movies if a superhero is not famous and if people don't know who he is. That's one thing I liked about Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania is Ruben called him Spider-Man. And then other times when like no one knows who Peter Parker is, obviously, because he's anonymous. And I liked when I just think it's funnier, or when Paul Rudd in Endgame, the kids in the cafe didn't know who he is and didn't care about his autographs. So when they have these moments of they hire actors just to freak out as a fan, I don't think that's as fun. That's not as fun. Hey, I have seen Tommy Lee Jones in Volcano the Third. Okay, it took me a second to realize what he was doing. I just rewatched Dante's Peak and Volcano in the same weekend. We did a double screening. And that movie is also ridiculous. And they do use explosives, right? They use rubble to redirect the flow of lava to the LA River so it makes it out to the Pacific Ocean. A completely insane movie, but it is really fun. It made me not want to visit the La Brea tar pits for a while. But anyway, I would have preferred if people didn't know who he was or care who he was. But yeah, we get our one cameo of Jeremy Irons, the great Jeremy Irons. Fun fact about Jeremy Irons, he voices the audio tour for Westminster Abbey in London. And it's really fun if you go to Westminster Abbey because you'll have the voice of Scar kind of tell you about all the British monarchs who are buried there. And it's just fun to have Scar do it because you kind of hear a hint of envy in his voice. I should have been king, but only the two young brothers are buried here. Children should never be rulers. It's just kind of a fun thing. Jeremy Irons, underutilized, amazing actor. This whole opening scene is just a delight. I just got a text from Ryan Airy from Screen Crush, and I don't understand what he means by it. It's a context. I don't know. We're both confused, Ryan Airy. If you're texting me during a live stream, what are you doing? Comment like everyone else does. So the people he's chasing here are the Falcones. That's Al Falcone, who's in the armored car. And I must have not heard it the first time I watched it, but like what's kind of cool about this is I believe Bruce fires first. No, Bruce doesn't fire first. They fire on him, and then he pulls out his machine guns and fires on them. Barry goes to Gotham General Hospital, the Martha Wayne wing of the hospital. And this scene is where I first was like, uh-oh, what is this movie? The babies are on roller carts. I don't understand how the babies weren't better protected. And they throw babies out a window, and we just spend so much time with the babies in free fall. And there's just too many babies, and he catches one in a bedpan. He catches one in a microwave. And I just said, what is the humor of this? Like, I understand that you can't physically just jerk the babies around because yikes, but can't you just like get like a big blanket that you catch them all in? Why do we put them in a microwave? It's just like, good God, that's horrifying. I so much of the scene of this opening sequence I really like. That's just one I couldn't get down with. But it is one of the coolest Ben Affleck Batman sequences that we've seen. It's at least in the top 5. And I know there aren't a ton that we've seen on screen. This is in the top 5. It's pretty impressive. And we do get a Wonder Woman cameo in here. And it's just like, does anyone feel anything anymore when Wonder Woman shows up in a DC movie? Be honest. Like, she just keeps showing up. She showed up in Shazam, and it's really diminishing returns at this point. I think after Wonder Woman 1984, I don't think anyone needs just Diana to show up. The coolest thing about it is the music, and that's nothing against Gal Gadot. I'll go watch her in another movie. I just think, like, it's not the needle drop that you think it is, Warner. But who knows? This movie was, like, put together in like 2019, 2020 is when they started shooting it, and the world was very different. This is before Wonder Woman 1984 came out, so that's fine. Barry revisits the night of his mother's murder, or the day of his mother's murder, and this is like an interesting question that we come out of the movie with, like, who did kill Nora Allen? I believe Andy Muschietti said in his mind it is Reverse Flash. They just didn't get to it in the movie. I have another theory that I made in the new Rockstars video, so go check that out. I think one really cool idea is that, there is a Barry that must exist in the future to make sure history goes the way it does, and I think that could be our Barry. So if you don't like Ezra Miller, and if you want to see Ezra Miller as a villain in this movie, that you might like that theory. Again, thank you all for joining me right now. I really appreciate being able to chat with all of you. Yeah, I think the fact, who just said that in the chat? TPPT Reverse Flash Microwave LOL memes. Hey, oh my god, yeah. I think that's another argument. This Barry's willing to put a baby in a microwave. He could turn into a pretty monstrous person. A lot of people are asking why the Speed Force Lightning is yellow in this movie as opposed to blue as it was in the Justice League, and other times we saw Barry. And I think it has to do with this new suit that Bruce has designed for him. It kind of filters the lightning to be gold as opposed to blue. And that's why when he's not wearing the suit later, or when it's a Barry in a different suit, it comes out as blue. I think it just, but you're right, it wasn't really explained. So Barry goes into the Speed Force, and we don't really see it in trailer footage, but we call it the Chrono Bowl. Let's talk about the VFX of it, because I think the Chrono Bowl was well conceived and well drawn and storyboarded of a concept. I like a kind of a Tesseract style. I'm just someone who's a visual learner, and I like seeing everything at a glance. So seeing like an array, a spectrum of different moments in time that you can connect with, I like that idea. The execution of it just looked a little way too artificial. It really did look like a PS3 cutscene in a game. And I hear what Andy Muschietti says. Like, his defense of it was that he intended it to look not lifelike because he wanted it to be something from Barry's perspective, like kind of his own underwater world, that he didn't want it to be directly reality. But if you want a kind of dollhouse aesthetic, you really have to lean into it. And I would say try to go practical. Make prosthetic dummies of all of them, or make them two-dimensional and flat in some way, or make them translucent in some way. Like, tell us that this is meant to be an artificial construct that represents moments of time as opposed to being actual literal moments of time. Because having seen Interstellar, when McConaughey looks through the bookcase, on the other end are actual corporeal moments of time. And even Nolan did certain things with the way the visuals, the way the lighting hits them, that made them look like memories. But I think part of the issue with this movie is because they didn't commit to like a clear visual execution of the way these cameos are supposed to look like, it led the audience to think that they're like puppeted CGI versions of the heroes they love, as opposed to glimpses into the past. And had you just stuck to something that looks like a tableau or a glimpse into the past, people are less attached to those things being real and judging them as if they're real. And that applies to the multiverse montage at the end of the movie. I think had we just seen archive footage of Christopher Reeve in Richard Donner's Superman films, I think people would have been okay with it, because then it's just like a clip show. It's just showing us like a glimpse into the past, but what they did is they recreated him with VFX and with CGI animation, and it just looks really spooky. Like, he has this green glow over him that Christopher Reeve never really had, and they have him do expressions. He turns and looks at Supergirl, and then he looks at the Rift. Like, why does he have to react to the multiverse? Why can't he just like be in the context of fighting Zod or Lex Luthor from his reality, and you could just use archive footage? You don't even need to spend the money. You could have saved that money and put more time into other things. Like, yeah, that's just my gripe with it. Again, I don't think everyone will have the same reaction I did. I just think that was a strategic mistake. But in general, I like the concept of the Chrono Bowl, and I think it looked really cool. Now, part of the issue, though, is that the Flashpoint storyline is already so beloved, and there's so many things from Flashpoint that they didn't use and could have. The idea of the Speed Force treadmill, the idea of starting the movie in an alternate reality, a Reverse Flash, really showing us the actual universe of this alternate Flashpoint reality. The whole Thomas Wayne storyline and the letter that gets written from Thomas Wayne to Bruce Wayne, like the most emotional part of Flashpoint was just left out of this movie. And you, again, that would have made it more of a Batman movie than a Flash movie. So I can understand why they made that choice. But I would just say, if you had issues with this movie, just go watch the DCAU, the animated version of the Flashpoint comic storyline, or just read the Flashpoint comic storyline. It's far more interesting at the end of the day. There's some more Easter eggs in this scene. I think one of my theories for why Stephen King praised this movie so hard is, I think, he likes Andy Muschietti for making him a butt ton of money from those It movies. It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2 are by far the most profitable Stephen King film adaptations. Way more than anything else. And if you look up the list, it's surprising what the ranking is. But like It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 are both billion-dollar movies. And Stephen King made a huge amount of money from that. So I think he's always liked Andy Muschietti. But two, there's this bizarre Raquel Welch poster from 1 Million Years BC in Barry's apartment that he phase shifts through. That's one thing that this movie does really well, is there are certain things of like Flash's superpowers, and I really like his ability to vibrate his atoms to fizz. I don't think I've seen that enough in live action, so I thought it looked really cool whenever he did that. And I like that they included it. But he does that through the Raquel Welch poster, which has got to be a reference to a Shawshank Redemption. Stephen King wrote the novella that it was based on, Rita Hayworth in the Shawshank Redemption, because, Andy Dufresne starts with the Rita Hayworth poster and then moves on to the Raquel Welch poster. So I think Stephen King just was overjoyed by these Easter eggs, and he's like, I loved it. But is it the best superhero movie of all time? No, it is not. It's not even the best superhero movie of this summer. For me, the ranking goes Across the Spiderverse, Guardians Volume 3, and then, I don't know if you want to call Indiana Jones a superhero. I guess probably not. The Flash or Transformers, I think, or Fast and Furious and Transformers are in a different category. But I would say the Flash goes right underneath Guardians, but it's not right underneath. There's probably a big drop off. But I still think the Flash was better than Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania. I mean, that was a real stinker of a movie. This was better than that. For people to say it's like garbage, I guess people were pretty hard on Quantumania too. But this movie at least had like mostly a complete story. I can understand why you object to stories about it, but it's just, that's my issue. There's a lot of like critics that are talking about this movie and saying it's poorly written and poorly directed. And I think, Chris Stuckman had a good take on this. If you go watch his reviews on YouTube, where he just said that nowadays we have no more nuance when we're talking about movies. That, we're in an era where people are professional movie critics just on their ability to have a hot take on Twitter, and even like professional movie critics who have been writing for years and years and years are feeling this pressure to just have a binary hot take on something because they want to be on the right side of history and the way that they talk about it, but are just kind of ignoring their own ability to give fair criticism to the elements of a movie that deserve fair treatment. And I can't rationalize how you can look at this movie and call it a 2 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10. I can understand disagreeing with certain choices, but it structurally does a lot of things really well. And I think that Andy Muschietti deserves to direct the next Batman movie, or if not that, some other big movie. I don't think he deserves to be judged if this movie underperforms. I think Christina Hodson needs to continue writing great movies because she's a very good writer. But I understand, again, as I said earlier in the stream, there's a lot of reasons why people might hate this movie. And if you object to Ezra Miller's criminal history, if you object to this movie existing at all, or ending the Spider-Verse as you see it, or Snyderverse as you see it, if you hate what Warner is doing in general with their slate and with the way they're producing DC movies, I completely understand. But if that's your take on Twitter, fine, but you can't use that to say that Christina Hodson's a bad writer, or that Andy Muschietti's a bad director. You just don't know what you're talking about. And if you're a movie critic who is bending over and taking a knee to that type of feedback process that is happening just because you're afraid of people tweeting at you, get a new job, because we need you to take your amazing insight into the way movies are made and educate viewers on how to watch movies. I spend so much time reading Roger Ebert's reviews, and I feel like you can learn so much about the film, and that's so much of what I try to do as a movie analyst or whatever. Is I want to get to the root of the movie and pay respect to the people who tried to make it. And when those people take shortcuts, yeah, you can call them out for it. But if you just disagree with the movie's existence, I don't think you can tarnish the work that went into it from some of the other actors or some of the people who worked on it. Let's see. Dirty Dancer, Muschietti doesn't have the visual palette to make Brave and the Bold. I just disagree with you, Dirty Dancer. I mean, I think the It movies are so incredible, and I think this movie. What do you mean the visual palette? I think Muschietti has an incredible visual palette. He knows how to shoot horror in a way that doesn't make everything impossible to see on screen. He's great with lighting. He knows how to work with a cinematographer to frame a shot to give you quite a few jump scares, but do it in a way that appeals to all four quadrants. He's not afraid to gross you out. He's not afraid to scare you. He's not afraid to make you laugh. He obviously can work with an amazing group of actors, especially in It Chapter 2. You had James McAvoy, you had Jessica Chastain, you had Bill Hader, and he's able to like put together a movie that can both make Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck shine. Some of the best Batman sequences I've ever seen are in this movie. I just completely disagree with anyone who says that Andy Muschietti can't direct Batman. You're out of your mind, in my opinion. Now, there may be better directors. I'm not saying Andy Muschietti is the only director who can do Batman, but I think he can do it. And I'm excited to see what he does with it. I'm going to skip ahead through this movie because, again, you can watch my Easter egg breakdown on the main channel. But in general, this is really where I had trouble with this movie is with the two Barrys. And I just think young Barry, the way Ezra played this character, is just so freaking annoying and in a way that isn't cute or fun. Because, yeah, you could say that, like, Peter Parker's, as played by Tom Holland, is kind of annoying in Spider-Man No Way Home and some of the Avengers movies, in that he's just kind of a dope. But he's annoying in a way that's cute and endears the character to you. Sidekicks can be kind of annoying, but they're meant to be more fun. It's a delicate balance, and I don't think they struck it at all in this movie. Because it forces old Barry to completely change the character, and they become a character who Barry is not at all in the opening act of the film. The film really loses me, and I think you could spend a bit of time in this sequence, but we spend so much time in this. And a lot of people love the scenes where... I'm trying to get to a specific part right around here where, they're transferring their powers, where he's sprinting around the lobby of the research lab. I didn't care for the whole scene with the roommates at all. All I really liked about it was the Eric Stoltz arguments, just because I just, obviously analyzed the deep dive, or I just analyzed Back to the Future on the deep dive, and I love the whole history of, like, recasting Eric Stoltz with Michael J. Fox. I think it's a fascinating story. And I like that they brought it into this movie. But again, it gets to the question of who is this movie for? Because I think a lot of people don't know that story. It's not as famous of a Hollywood story. And there's a few examples of that throughout the movie where I'm like, okay, it appeals to people like me, but I don't know if everyone's going to get it. Specifically, Nicolas Cage fighting the giant spider at the end of the movie. I saw that. I lost my mind. I applauded. The whole group of people I saw it with, we all loved it. But I think a lot of people are just like, what is Nicolas Cage doing playing Superman fighting a spider? You have to go on YouTube or you have to go follow Kevin Smith to know that Hollywood history. And once you do, it's hilarious. Mr. Marty Mart asks, where would you rank Shazam 2? At the bottom. I think I love David F. Sandberg as a director, and I love every horror short he has made. But I think Shazam 2 is just, it's rough. To me, it's the worst superhero movie that came out this year, at least of the high-profile ones. And it's mostly just because, as much as I had issues with Ezra Miller playing the younger Barry in this movie, every time Zach Levi was on screen in Shazam 2, I was like, just someone stop. Just someone get them off the screen. Because it was almost like offensive to Asher Angel the way Zachary Levi was playing the adult Shazam version, because we'd cut to a scene where Asher Angel had like tears on his face, and then we cut to Zachary Levi going like, well, I guess I gotta go fight dragon now, and then like zip off like he's Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Like, I hated the way he played it, and he didn't do that bad in the 2019 movie, so I don't understand what the hell happened there. One I think one issue you can point to with the writing of this movie and just the way it's struck, it might just be a pacing thing. Zod arrives, and the world engine starts destroying Metropolis, and we spend at least 8 hours taking a cab to Wayne Manor because we just saw that from Central City, Barry Allen had to cross like half the country at the beginning of the movie. He had to go through desert terrain. He had to go through a mountain pass. He had to go past a mountain lake. It took him a good amount of time to go from Central City to Gotham. So for them in this reality to start in Central City and take a freaking taxi cab to Gotham must have taken at least a few hours while Zod is actively terraforming Metropolis, and then they hang out. They have a long spaghetti conversation with Bruce Wayne. They're in the Batcave as like Barry's slowly scrolling through different locations where a Clark Kent might exist. Then they take a plane to Siberia. They start in Siberia at nighttime. They come out when it's morning, so you know a couple more hours have passed. They go back. Like, is the idea that the desert that they fight in is the ruins of Metropolis? No, I just think that's where the battle happens because that's where it happens in Man of Steel. There's just the timeline of this. Like, they keep checking the news and then the world engine's still plowing away at the city and they're like, but anyway, so which spaghetti noodle is the branch timeline? You know, like, just the pacing of it threw me off a little bit. But Michael Keaton is delightful to watch in this movie. And if anything, one thing that bummed me out is I wish that there was there was more Michael Keaton in it because I think of all of Ezra Miller's issues, they had to use Michael Keaton in the marketing a whole lot, and they set an expectation that this would be a Michael Keaton Batman movie, and it only was really in the second act. But Michael Keaton's a big goofball, and I think we forget how silly Michael Keaton is, but he's such a delight to watch. And this might just be me, but I really feel like Andy Muschietti's one of his favorite movies has to be Multiplicity. Watch that movie. It doesn't age that well, I'll warn you, but Multiplicity is kind of like a comedy where Michael Keaton plays like a guy who's able to duplicate himself. And at some point there's like 4 or 5 different Michael Keatons all sharing a room together. And the idea of it is the further copies you make, you end up making like a copy of a copy, and then intellectually the last copy you make is just a little off. And that's why it's kind of, the movie doesn't age that well, because the way Michael Keaton plays it is, it's a bit hard to watch now. But when the movie came out like 20 to 30 years ago, it was pretty funny, pretty successful. And I think that is the way they're approaching younger Barry here. I think he just plays it really dumb. And I know he's 10 years younger, and I guess he never really had to apply himself in mathematics and science because but at this point, this would have been, no, because Barry lost his mom when he was a kid. But he was already pretty smart on the day of that murder because he was coming up with all the different ways to get 24. And that kid seemed, 10, 11? I don't think I thought that hard about how to get to 24 on a math assignment. I just don't think Barry would be this dumb. But I really did enjoy the way Michael Keaton played it. I like that they gave him this long hair so they could have like a badass sequence where he's like flinging pans at them. And I do like the alternate approach to the multiverse explanation in general. Just because we've seen that so many times. They tend to use food often, and Everything Everywhere All at Once. There's a bagel. Also, weirdly, a bagel in Across the Spiderverse. In Into the Spiderverse, there's a deleted scene where he uses French fries. Most of the time, they fold a piece of paper in half and cut a pencil through it. This is when the movie started cooking for me. I really enjoyed all the return to the Batcave, and they added a waterfall, but overall it seems like mostly the same Batcave, and it's really just Danny Elfman's music just got me going. So yeah, I very much enjoyed this part of the movie. I thought all the stuff when he's flying down into this Siberian facility, kicking ass. Like, this is some of the best action. Some of the best. It's not the best Batman action we've seen, but it works for me. It was a lot of fun. I think the only weird thing about it is after he beats up everyone, I don't think you see it here, but there's like a moment where the finishing move isn't as strong. I think like what really works in like the Matrix and John Wick films is like there's an escalation and a heightening to the action where each person he fights is just a little bit tougher and deadlier than the one who came before, and the way he kills them is that much more brutal. And I was hoping for that, but instead what happened is like it just kind of ends with a whimper. This fight sequence does, but overall, kudos to the stunt team and the stunt double for Michael Keaton in this sequence. Sasha Calle as Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, a lot of fun in this movie, and I wish that she was more a part of it, and I hope that they can find a way to bring her back in the future, because I thought she was excellent, and she was really fun to watch in this movie. And there is a great long take here that I really enjoyed. One thing I don't really understand is like how this was all like 12 seconds into a long take, but she like snuck up his arm so that no one saw her. I guess they do start firing on her pretty early. But yeah, I think my favorite part of this is there's a moment where right here, when I didn't notice in the trailer, I should have seen it. She's blocking a bullet that's going right for his face. You know, his suit's bulletproof otherwise, but she saved his life. It wasn't just like beating him to the punch for a blow. She sends him flying. And what's cool, I talk about this in the breakdown, the Russian lettering on this potato sack she's wearing it translates to the most dangerous. So the most dangerous makes it seem like there might be other metahumans that they kept in there, or just other prisoners, high security prisoners that they kept in there. Now, I think another issue with the plot structure of the movie is just like the idea of making Barry lose his powers just to regain them. And it felt a little easy the way he regained them with this Benjamin Franklin kite experiment. I just wasn't crazy about like, oh, so if you just know enough about your origin, like superhero origins are supposed to be so accidental, like to where they could be impossible to recreate. The fact that they could just recreate it through this kind of haphazard experiment and Supergirl flying him up into the sky so he gets zapped by a stronger bolt of lightning, it was just like, well, then why make him lose his powers at all? I think it might have been more fun if both Barrys still had their powers and then they were like speeding around trying to catch each other and having races and stuff like that. I think they were trying to do the classic story beat of you depower the superhero and there's something funnier about that. But it just didn't really work for me to have him regain it here. It felt a little forced. But one cool thing about, I see people saying it was like so disrespectful to have this dumb young Barry turn the 1992 bat suit into a crappy Flash suit. But what I like about it is that, Michael Keaton Batman designed these suits so that they'd be scary, so that they'd be like horror instruments to strike fear into the hearts of the villains of Gotham. So the fact that young Barry can use this to turn into a suit, but then over time he turns into this dark Flash, I think it's building on the horror imagery that is already part of this suit. So I like that. I don't know if everyone caught it or looks at it that way. The action in this sequence, you can't really see it here, but again, my favorite moment of this movie is just when he is wearing the cowl and just turns his head. He looks so stupid in that moment. It cracked me up. I think it's super funny. So this desert battle scene, super fun, but like, yeah, the VFX doesn't really, like even this shot right here, just like they're clearly on like a green screen set. It's not even volume quality because the lighting's just a bit weird. I like a good superhero pose, but I mean, you would think they would kick up more dust, there'd be trails, and we just see like little bits of gravel. Now this is from a trailer. It might be a little bit better in the movie, but I mean, I've seen the movie twice. It's not that much better than this. So yeah, a lot of the VFX in this sequence is just it just feels like it doesn't have weight, and it doesn't really have texture. But I mean, even when young Barry gets impaled with these Kryptonian fuselage crystals, it doesn't really seem to hurt him. And I know that he has like active healing powers, but it doesn't, you would think he'd be like screaming in pain or like clutching or doubled over a little bit, and it just seemed like he wasn't really reacting to it at all. But there was a lot of just like cool hits in this movie. I like how hard she goes against Zod. At some point she just goes full Ralphie Parker on him, and she grabs this like pole and just like javelins it right into his face, like bam. It was just really fun. Again, it just made me want to see more of a movie with her. I also like the detail of, there's this moment when these two idiots do the stupid like ring dunking. They're like, all right, let's do it, and they spin around each other and they punch everyone in the balls, and it, like when I watched it, I'm like, that can't be the cool move that they do. And I really like the idea of when they loop back on it, they kind of recognize how stupid and indulgent that moment was, and they use that moment because they know what they were doing and how preoccupied they were with this stupid battle tactic, and that's when they go try to help Kara and they try to help Bruce. So I think it was by design, some of this being kind of silly and dumb. Now again, a lot of you in the comments are saying, just point out, where was this from the 2011 Flashpoint comics? And I agree. I think in general this would have been a better story had they stuck more close to the comics. And the amount of money they spent on this, they could have afforded to do something closer to the comics. And as much as I love Michael Keaton in this, I think I would have preferred this movie if it were just Jeffrey Dean Morgan playing Thomas Wayne, and he got to be the mentor figure to Barry Allen. And then we could have had his relationship with Ben Affleck. Maybe Jeffrey Dean Morgan wasn't available, but I mean, you recast Henry Allen, you could recast Thomas Wayne. There's just like other approaches, but I mean, I don't want to judge the movie that could have been too much, and rather just look at the movie they had. And that's why I think this movie is at least a 6 out of 10. You know, it's not like a 4 out of 10. It's like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, I would say. But unfortunately, you were just really stuck with Ezra Miller, and I don't think Ezra Miller did a great job in this movie, ultimately. And I think, unfortunately, just holds the film back. Yeah, I also don't understand why Bruce would kamikaze. I guess he was kind of out of options, and he really felt, well, this is the best I can do. And he didn't want Zod to get away in the flagship. But I just thought there was other tactics he still could have tried out. So now we re-enter the Chrono Bowl, and because so much of this movie's final act took place in this arena, I think that's what lost a lot of folks. If it looked just a bit more tactile, or you know, because that's the thing about the Tesseract in Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, it looks really cool. Like not just the way it was designed with the 90-degree angles, like the fact that he used a bookcase and he stretched it out into these, like, they look like the bands or the strings of a harp, and then he thumps them and then they move with his fingers. Like, Nolan really thought it through down to like a granular level what that Tesseract would look and feel and sound like. The only thing that you don't get are the other kind of senses because he's in a spacesuit, but like you do feel like Matthew McConaughey is bumping up against things physically. And in this, it was just so much color, so much VFX that like you just don't really get a sense of what the characters are feeling, what it feels like to occupy that space. It really was just a bit too much. But again, I think visually, the design was there. Whoever initially sketched out that deserves all the credit in the world. I think the concept of a time coliseum is really cool. It's just the execution of it. Could have just spent a bit more time on it. Or just, you could have spent less effort on the VFX and just like made them like cardboard cutouts of these moments, or just like clearly two-dimensional projections that just beam up from behind. You know, like in the Spielberg movie Minority Report, where Tom Cruise is looking at the memories of like his kid when they were swimming, and the way it just beams up from behind. Now, I'm not saying that was like a cheap visual effect, but it was in 2003 and it looked really good. I would have loved something like that, just to show that these are like projections of moments in time as opposed to actual people, and they're supposed to look realistic. So yeah, I already talked about all the cameos who show up here. If you want to watch my videos about that, ultimately, I don't have an issue with Warner showing archive footage of these moments. I particularly loved the Nicolas Cage Superman moment. I just don't think they needed to re-puppet Christopher Reeve. And I don't know, people might still be really pissed off and object to it, and feel that it was an insult to Christopher Reeve's memory. And if you do look at all the interviews Christopher Reeve gave, he had so much integrity as an actor. So I can understand why people feel miffed by it, and especially with George Reeves, and everything that he suffered through. I mean, watch the Ben Affleck 2006 film Hollywoodland, but also just read everything you can about, I mean, he brought so much hope and inspiration and joy to so many while suffering this private battle with mental health. And but I think his cameo is so fast, he really just kind of stands there smiling. So I liked seeing him there. I didn't have a problem with seeing George Reeves, because it was just so quick. There is a weird thing. Apparently it wasn't Teddy Sears who played Flash. Like, he says, I have a newborn and I don't remember shooting anything for it. So apparently they just took his appearance and just put it on that version of the Flash. And I was like, I don't know, guys. I'm still trying to figure out what they did. Um, the But yeah, we end in this final reality where you know, sorry, just going back through the string out, where George Clooney is playing Batman, and I don't think this means it is like the Joel Schumacher era of Batman, or it is the era of him, but it's not like that reality. So I just think it's kind of a wink, and it, in many people's minds, banishes Barry in this alternate reality that's not going to be the main DC continuity going forward. I think they could have left it vague without a cameo, and then I think people would have felt like more okay with the way this movie exists and their understanding of what DC canon is. But by, you know, by I don't know. I think when I first saw the movie, I like seeing George Clooney. I think George Clooney is a really good actor, and I think he's even mentioned how he didn't do his best work, that he didn't really understand the Batman character, and that he didn't give it the time and energy that he should have. So I've always appreciated him for that, his honesty. I'm going to take a couple of questions. Naval Brar says, what did you think of Dark Flash? I thought the concept of Dark Flash was pretty fun. I would have preferred Reverse Flash, but I like that they had this antagonist force, but he wasn't enough of an antagonist throughout the movie. But not every movie needs a classic antagonist that way. Jameson asks, why did he move the cans to the top shelf? Did he not learn his lesson when he almost destroyed the universe? Is he that naive? What am I missing? Well, he may be that naive. Maybe he felt that just moving the cans to a different shelf wouldn't be that much of an alteration to the timeline. But also, yeah, that's why I say this movie didn't really leave the character with any kind of new perspective of the dangers of toying with the multiverse, and didn't really move it forward. Because, like, you would think that he'd just be okay with his reality as it is, but the movie is, Happy Father's Day, by the way, not a movie about a boy saving his mother. It's about a boy saving himself and his father. But, you know, he did pay the price by altering that. He ended up in a timeline where Bruce Wayne is not Ben Affleck. So, yeah, but I agree with you. I think he didn't learn his lesson. Den Bay says, I feel like Ezra might not come back, and they knew this. They used the Flash for melancholy and to promote future projects. Yeah, I think honestly, that's why I'm okay with people going to see this movie. I think with all the headache that Ezra Miller has caused Warner, I don't think we're going to see Ezra in a long time in this movie, in movies. I don't think you're taking a stand if you pay to see this movie and you're supporting someone like Ezra Miller. I think it's going to be a while before we see Ezra again. And so I think we all know that, and I think Ezra was just trapped to use them in this movie, and they didn't really have another way to reshoot it. Play Tilt Hurt says, in this modern age, I think we overanalyze movies too much. I think do we overanalyze movies too much? It's a good question. No, I don't think we do. I think people don't spend enough time actually thinking about movies. I think they spend too much time talking about movies. And they're so eager to just have a hot take that will get enough views and clicks on Twitter and to like make everyone laugh in their friend group or to make them sound smart. And they don't spend enough time actually thinking about the movie they just saw. So I don't have a problem with over-analysis and thinking about different viewpoints and reading up on how a film was made and appreciating the artistry that went into it. But I think now we're in an era where anyone can say anything about a movie and anyone can see it because it's online and things can just randomly trend. And then everyone reacts to it, and they react to the reaction, and then it's not even a real conversation. It never really was. So yeah, I don't think there's enough real thoughtful analysis. I think there's just a lot of people saying crap about it. Book says, I honestly think they should establish Zod and focus on defeating him rather than rushing through pointless cameos and nostalgic baits. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that would have fixed it, to be honest with you. I think we already know who Zod is and what his objectives are. I think it would have just been rehashing who he was from the 2013 Man of Steel, and I don't think Zod is the best villain to Barry Allen. I would have preferred Reverse Flash or even Gorilla Grodd, or, you know, one of Barry's classic superhero villains, you know, if you are going to do that. Yeah, again, but I agree with you. I think the nostalgic, the member berries might have overwhelmed it a bit too much. But again, those also don't come until the very end of the movie. I mean, there were issues with this movie long before that. It was like over 2 hours. So we had to sit through 2 hours of other things before we really got to the nostalgia, I would say. If anything, the only nostalgia stuff was with Michael Keaton Batman, and I liked all that. Like, I didn't have a problem with those member berries because I think a lot of people don't really know what was cool about it. I mean, I love the laughing box bag. I thought that was really fun. Little things like that I thought were cute. It was later on where they just started to go overboard with it. Rocco, you can't just do detail. I'm going to put you on timeout. Let's see. Is he in timeout? Great. There he is. Haha. Nice try. I try to keep, I know, I just self-moderate this because I only want you guys to be chatting with me. Okay. So if I see any other super chats come through or other comments, I'll try to address those. But one thing that I want to guys let you all know is that keep a lookout across the New Rockstars network over the next few weeks. There are some really exciting new things coming out. I can't say too much about it yet. But I know some of you have felt that in the past 6 months or the past year that New Rockstars might have gotten off course a little bit, or it's just not the same channel that you might have subscribed to. Some of you might have just subscribed in the past 6 months, and I really appreciate that because in my opinion, we've always been really striving hard to do great film analysis and TV analysis on YouTube. But we've been trying to do a lot of things at once in the past year, and we haven't really had strong, firm leadership behind the scenes. We've had a lot of great people helping out. We just haven't locked in any choices of who's actually going to make the final decision on things. And we all really get along at New Rockstars, so we've been trying to be respectful for each other. But I think we're now in a place now where I can comfortably say that there's going to be more of an attention to quality over quantity, and there's going to be some real leadership and vision across the network that I think will reassure you, and you'll promise me you're going to start to see some changes and some improvements across our network. Ultimately, I'm not saying this so that you should feel like I'm saying that it sucked over the past 6 months. No, I think it's actually been really, really good, and I'm proud of the work everyone's been doing. But it's just been kind of like a lot all at once. And I understand when you subscribe to a channel and it doesn't really feel like it's all coming from the same aligned vision. So that's what we're going to be doing now, is we're going to be restoring the general vision and the brand of the New Rockstars network. And we have 3 channels now. That's why it's been hard, is we launched a deep dive, we launched the break room, and we're trying to just get those off the ground. But now we just in the past week figured out a way that we can align all of these things so that they're all serving the same objective and doing the best to give you what you want when you want it, and from the voices that you want to hear it from. So to answer some other questions, what did Maud and Hector show up to do? I don't want to say it, but you'll see. So that's another thing that we're trying to restore things to form. Hector Navarro has been doing a lot of great stuff with us, and a lot of you know Hector from the stuff he's been doing on Heroes Reforged and on Nerdist. And then Maud Garrett, one of my all-time favorite hosts that I've ever co-hosted with on the New Rockstars channel years ago. We were able to get her back. So you'll find out very soon what we did together and what we're going to be doing this summer. All right, questions about let me moderate for you. Do you need moderators? No, I specifically do not want any moderators for the deep dive channel. I want to just keep this small and kind of in-house, just because I think for bigger channels it helps to have moderators, but I know things can get kind of chaotic in the chat. I kind of am okay with just letting the chaos happen. I have certain filtered words, and I try to keep an eye out for people who are spamming things, and I'll block them if they're doing that. But specifically, if you have moderators, it asks for too much like volunteer assistance, and that kind of gives the volunteers a bit too much authority to start like striking down other things on your behalf, and then that can turn away well-meaning people sometimes. And I want to try doing it on the deep dive where that's not the case, but I do agree. I think on some of our other channels, moderation would help. It just requires a lot of effort and oversight and regulation, and I just haven't had time to set up those rules yet. Another question. Just listened to Jessica's first podcast on The Ringer, and she did great. Yeah, I wish her all the best too. I just hung out with Jessica this past week, and we got dinner together, and she's doing really great. I want to still try to find ways to collaborate with her and other places, but Yeah, go check out what Jessica's doing on The Ringer because she's doing really great work. Um, let's see. Mr. Marty Mart says, "Did you enjoy the movie or not?" Case closed for me. For me, as I said, it was a 6 out of 10. Ultimately, I enjoyed it. Um, like maybe 6 to even a 7 out of 10. I enjoyed it overall. There was just like that's the thing. You're asking me, did you enjoy the movie or not? That is the problem right now on the internet. Is everyone has to like firmly say whether a movie was good or bad, and that's not how things work in the world. Like it's a work of art that has a lot of different good things about it and good and bad things about it. And to say that thing is either fresh or rotten is just destroyed movie criticism on the internet. So no, that's not the answer I'm going to give you. I'm sorry. Um, uh, let's see. Chris Blunk says Gina Ippolito is so funny on the break room. I hope she gets to stay on more. Yeah, we love Gina. She's been such a good writer for us. We want to continue working with her. Trying to see if there's anything else that I want to. Alan asks, is Philip still there? No, Philip has not been with New Rockstars. He left back in October, and even then, he was kind of like in and out of the company for the past several years. So he's, I believe, doing stuff at Mr. Beast right now. But no, he like kind of checked out of New Rockstars back in like 2017 or 2018 and would come back for like a month at a time and then disappear for 3 months. So, but he firmly left New Rockstars in October, and he hasn't been here since. But that's part of the issue is like we've been trying to put a good, healthy leadership place put in place. We were all very much surprised and caught off guard by that departure. So we want to have like a good system in place that everyone can be aligned with, and it is kind of because we've had such good vibes since then, and I think everyone's really been getting along, and there's been a great energy and a great culture, and we just want to like we want to lock it all in place so that it can be sustainable now going forward, basically. Um, People saying they were here for the mod days. Yeah, you remember how much fun it was. Um, and again, if this movie wasn't your thing, or if you don't want to go watch the movie, I get it. You know, you don't have to go see every movie, but I just think like if it is your job to be a film critic, if you're paid to be a film critic, you have to talk about movies that you didn't really like sometimes. Yeah, I think that's just how it goes. Like people need to hear like some of my favorite criticisms to read were Roger Ebert talking crap about some movies he didn't like, but he wouldn't talk crap. He would really fundamentally get to the core of what was wrong in the movie. And we missed that. I think not enough critics are allowing themselves to give a bad review to a film because just in case it ends up being good or if Twitter likes it, like there's just not the bravery that was there when Siskel and Ebert and even Ebert and Roper were doing it. And there's still a lot of great critics out there. I'm not saying it's just like they're all being drowned out by just so many other tomato meter voices. And that's why like I'm always so nervous to review films because I don't think I'm as good as a critic as some of the people who are actually film critics right now. My job is to just like talk about the craftsmanship and artistry, and sometimes people feel like that makes me a shill, but I just think there's so many artists who worked on this movie that deserve to be celebrated, and I don't want to just write off a movie as bad or 3 out of 8 stars or whatever it is. All right, everybody, we're going to call it there, but I appreciate you joining me for this discussion on The Flash. It's been really great to talk about it with you. Again, if you want to support the deep dive, the best way to do it is to grab one of these Indie I Love You shirts at nerdright.shop. Our analysis of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is coming out tomorrow on the channel, but on the deep dive channel. But watch all 3 of our channels. We have the New Rockstars main channel that's going to have some really fun videos coming out in the next week, and then we're going to have the break room that has some immediate reaction stuff, and that's where Inside Marvel's going to be. But our Easter egg breakdown of A Secret Invasion is coming out on Wednesday, the day of the release at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern time. That's what we're aiming for. And I was able to see the first episode already, and I can tell you it's great. It's really, really good. I mean, it's a bit slower than episode 2 is, but I think this is going to be a good series, and I think it's going to put Marvel back on the map in a lot of ways. So I love you guys, and I'll see you next time, my Divers of the Deep. Bye-bye.